Omar, a 19-year-old college student, sat in his dimly lit room, scrolling endlessly through social media as the hours of the night slipped away. His face, illuminated by the screen's blue glow, looked tired, yet he couldn't stop. He'd told himself 100 times, "Tomorrow, I'll change. I'll sleep early. I'll pray on time." But here he was, once again, wide awake at 3 a.m., lost in a cycle he couldn't control. The quietness of the room felt suffocating, his scattered books and unmade bed a reflection of his own inner chaos. When Omar finally drifted off to sleep, he was plagued by restless dreams. The following morning, he jolted awake, only to see that the Fajr prayer had long passed. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, the weight of his broken promises heavy on his shoulders. As he reached for his phone, notifications flooded the screen. Without thinking, he began scrolling through messages, news feeds, and videos, completely losing track of time. By the time he snapped out of it, most of the morning was gone. Frustrated, he tossed his phone aside. "Tomorrow, I'll fix this," he muttered to himself, though a voice in the back of his mind questioned whether he even believed it. Days turned into weeks, and Omar's routine remained the same. Each day, he promised himself he'd study harder, sleep earlier, and pray consistently. Yet every night, he found himself in the same trap. Even his family noticed the shift. At dinner, his mother watched him with worried eyes as he absent-mindedly pushed his food around on his plate. She gently suggested, "Omar, maybe you could join us for Isha prayer at the mosque. It might give you some peace." Omar forced a smile, brushing her off with a quick, "I'll try, Mom." But he knew deep down he was stuck in a pattern he couldn't break. One night, Omar's father invited him to a lecture at the mosque. Feeling a bit guilty for neglecting his family, he agreed. The mosque was filled with people, and as the speaker began, Omar found himself strangely captivated. The speaker, an older man with a calm, commanding presence, shared his own struggles from youth, describing the constant pull of desires and distractions. His words resonated deeply with Omar, as if he was speaking directly to him. "We think we control our actions," the speaker said, "but often our desires control us. Without purpose, we are left chasing temporary comforts, feeling more empty with each passing day." For the first time in a long time, Omar felt a spark of hope. The speaker's words echoed in his mind. To break free, start small and ask for Allah's guidance. Seek His help, and you'll find a strength beyond your own. On the way home, Omar decided that the following morning he'd make an effort to wake up for Fajr. He set his alarm with a mix of determination and doubt, wondering if he could finally break free from this cycle. The next morning, his alarm blared, and for a moment he felt the familiar urge to turn it off and fall back asleep. But something stopped him. Remembering the speaker's words, he forced himself out of bed, performed wudu, and prayed Fajr. The stillness of the early morning felt different this time. He felt a quiet sense of peace, as if he'd reclaimed a part of himself he'd lost. Over the next few days, Omar began to set small goals. He'd wake up for Fajr and avoid his phone until after his prayer. Slowly, he introduced more changes, like setting time limits for social media and spending time in reflection instead of aimless scrolling. He also began taking short walks after prayer, allowing himself to clear his mind and connect with Allah in silence. But it wasn't an easy journey. Some nights, he'd find himself back on his phone, falling into the old habit of endless scrolling. Each time he felt tempted, he remembered the speaker's words and tried to redirect his focus. One evening, as he sat on his prayer mat, he made a sincere dua, asking Allah for strength to resist his temptations. He whispered, "Ya Allah, I can't do this alone. Please help me find control." One Friday, as he was leaving Jumu'ah prayer, a group of young men from his neighborhood invited him to join them for volunteer work at a local shelter. Initially, he hesitated, thinking about all the things he needed to do, but realizing that this was an opportunity to fill his time with something purposeful, he agreed. Working at the shelter became a regular part of his schedule, and he found himself energized by doing something meaningful. For the first time in months, he felt the satisfaction of serving others and being productive. One evening, while walking home from the shelter, Omar paused under the streetlights. A calm settled over him as he reflected on his journey. Each small step he'd taken, whether waking up for Fajr, volunteering, or reducing screen time, had brought him closer to the person he wanted to be. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and whispered, "Alhamdulillah." For the first time, he understood that self-discipline wasn't just about breaking bad habits. It was about choosing what truly mattered. As weeks went by, Omar's family noticed a remarkable change in him. He was more present, more engaged in their conversations, and far less distracted. One evening, his mother smiled at him and said, "It's good to have you back, Omar." He felt a warmth in his heart, grateful that his family could see the positive shift in him. The real test came when he received a text message late one night, inviting him to join an online chat with his old friends. The familiar temptation stirred within him, but instead of giving in, he placed his phone aside, picked up the Quran, and began to read. The calmness and clarity he felt afterward reminded him that this was the path he wanted to stay on. He felt the words sink into his heart, filling the emptiness he used to try to cover up with endless scrolling. Over time, Omar's strength grew. The struggles never completely disappeared, but with each temptation he resisted, he felt his connection to Allah deepen. He realized that his journey was about more than self-control. It was about surrendering his desires to a higher purpose. His heart felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted, and he knew that he was no longer a slave to his impulses. Finally, one morning after Fajr, Omar sat by the window, watching the sun rise over the city. He reflected on how far he had come and the peace he now felt within himself. This peace, he knew, wasn't from his own strength alone, but was a gift from Allah. He closed his eyes and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, knowing that this was only the beginning of a lifelong journey of discipline, purpose, and faith. Omar's journey reminds us that true self-control comes from seeking Allah's guidance and taking small, intentional steps. If you're struggling with distractions, remember, change is possible, and it starts with one sincere choice. Turn to Allah, trust in His help, and reclaim your purpose. If this story inspired you, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected for more inspiring stories.